Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo. Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Say these verses together. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militan Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai. So welcome everyone to this morning's class. We are going to be reading from 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 1. This chapter is called The Advent of Lord Krishna. And we're picking up from text 36. We'll read all of the translations through to 45, and then we'll focus on text 42. So this is, just to put it in context, and we're talking about, this chapter is the advent of Lord Krishna, in other words, the birth of Lord Krishna, the appearance, not that he's born like an ordinary person, but he appears by his sweet will in this world, to, out of his causeless mercy, to bless the world and to perform some missions and purposes. And so before he appears, he arranges for his eternal parents to appear, because when Krishna comes, he likes to come in a natural way, in a way that people can relate to. And it's not that he doesn't have parents. In the spiritual world, there are families and communities and relationships. So before he's planning to appear, and first of all, he sends his eternal mother and father, Vasudeva and Devaki. And so many things happened up to this point, but what's going on now is that Vasudeva and Devaki just got married. So on the way home, Devaki's brother, Kamsa, who is not a nice person at all, he's driving the chariot to take her to, their new home. She's going to move into her new husband's home. And on the way, he hears a voice in the sky, this disembodied voice that says, "Kamsa, you fool, you're helping your sister in her new married life, but you don't know that the 8th son of your sister is going to kill you." So then Kamsa is like, "Oh, her 8th son is going to kill you? That's not going to happen." So then he grabs her by the hair and he takes out his sword and he's like, "I'll just kill her right now and there won't be any sons. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th. So I'll be safe." So that's what's going on right here. We're right in the middle of that incident. And so Vasudeva, her Devaki's husband, he's like, "Wait a minute, Kamsa, let's talk." He wants to stop this. So Vasudeva is very diplomatic and very calm and cool and collected, considering that his wife was about to be murdered on their wedding day. So we're going to hear what Vasudeva says to Kamsa, what Vasudeva says to Kamsa to try to pacify him. And he speaks some very important philosophy about the soul, the relationship between the soul and the body. Okay, so text 36.
Wanting to
Go ahead.
Wanting to pacify Kamsa, who was so cruel and envious that he was shamelessly ready to kill his sister, the great soul Vasudeva, who was to be the father of Krishna, spoke to him in the following words.
Vasudeva said, "My dear brother-in-law, Kamsa, you are the pride of your family, the Bhoja dynasty, and great heroes praise your qualities. How could such a qualified person as you kill a woman, your own sister, especially on the occasion of her marriage?"
O great hero, one who takes birth is sure to die, for death is one with the body. One may die today or after 100 years, hundreds of years, but death is sure for every living entity.
When the present body turns to dust and is again reduced to 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, the proprietor of the body and living being automatically receives another body of material elements according to his fruitive activities. When the next body is obtained, he gives up the present body.
Just as a person traveling on the road rests one foot on the ground and then lifts the other, or as a worm on a vegetable transfers itself to one leaf and then gives up the previous one, the conditioned soul takes shelter of another body and then gives up the one he had before.
Having experienced a situation by seeing or hearing about it, one contemplates and speculates about that situation, and thus one surrenders to it, not considering his present body. Similarly, by mental adjustments, one dreams at night of living under different circumstances in different bodies and forgets his actual position. Under this same process, one gives up his present body and accepts another body. Tata dehantara prapti.
At the time of death, according to thinking, feeling, and willing of the mind, which is involved in fruitive activities, one receives a particular body. In other words, the body develops according to the activities of the mind. Changes of body are due to the flickering of the mind, for otherwise the soul could remain in its original spiritual body.
When the luminaries in the sky, such as the moon, the sun, and the stars, are reflected in liquids like oil or water, they appear to be of different shapes, sometimes round, sometimes long, and so on, because of the movements of the wind. Similarly, when the living entity, the soul, is absorbed in materialistic thought, he accepts various manifestations as his own identity because of ignorance. In other words, one is bewildered by mental concoctions because of agitation from the material modes of nature.
Therefore, since envious, impious activities cause a body in which our suffers in the next life, why should one act impiously? Considering one's welfare, one should not envy anyone. For envious person must always fear harm from his enemies, either in this life or in the next.
As your younger sister, this poor girl Devaki is like your own daughter and deserves to be affectionately maintained. You are merciful, and therefore you should not kill her. Indeed, she deserves your affection.
Okay, so we'll stop there and go back to 42. So please open up the Sanskrit for 42. And we will do this responsively. Yato yato davati daiva choditam Mano vikaratmakam apapanchasu Guneshu maya rachiteshu deyaso Prapadyamana sahatena jayate Yato yato davati daiva choditam Mano vikaratmakam apapanchasu Guneshu maya rachiteshu deyaso Prapadyamana sahatena jayate Please chat. Yato yato davati daiva choditam Mano vikaratmakam apapanchasu Guneshu maya rachiteshu deyaso Prapadyamana sahatena jayate Yato yato davati daiva choditam Mano vikaratmakam apapanchasu Guneshu maya rachiteshu deyaso Prapadyamana sahatena jayate Yato yato davati daiva choditam Mano vikaratmakam apapanchasu Guneshu maya rachiteshu deyaso Prapadyamana sahatena jayate Let's do the word for word all together. Yata yata, from one place to another or from one position to another. Davati, speculates. Daivachoditam, impelled by accident or deliberation. Manaha, the mind. Vikara atmakam, changing from one type of thinking, feeling, and willing to another. Apa, at the end, he obtains a mentality. Panchasu, at the time of death, when the material body turns totally into matter. Guneshu, the mind, not being liberated, becomes attached to the material qualities. Maya rachiteshu, where the material energy creates a similar body. Dehi, the spirit soul who accepts such a body. Aso, he, prapadyamanaha, being surrendered to such a condition. Saha, with, yuktena, a similar body. Jayate takes birth. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. At the time of death, according to the thinking, feeling, and willing of the mind, which is involved in fruitive activities, one receives a particular body. In other words, the body develops according to the activities of the mind. Changes of body are due to the flickering of the mind, for otherwise the soul could remain in its original spiritual body. Purport. One can very easily understand that the mind is constantly flickering, changing in the quality of its thinking, feeling, and willing. Anyone experience that? The mind is always changing, different thoughts, different feelings, different desires coming up all the time. This is explained by Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita 6:34. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balavadridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayor eva sudushkaram. The mind is chanchala, flickering, and it changes very strongly. Therefore, Arjuna admitted that controlling the mind is not at all possible. This would be as difficult as controlling the wind. For example, if one were in a boat moving according to the wind on a river or the sea, and the wind were uncontrollable, the tilting boat would be very much disturbed and extremely difficult to control. It might even capsize. Therefore, in the Bhava Samudra, the ocean of mental speculation and transmigration to different types of bodies, one must first control the mind. That's like our situation, right? This mind is going all over, and it's causing our psychological state, our situation, our relationships in this world to be always disturbed, right? And extremely difficult to control, and might even capsize. Because of the activities of the mind, things in our life capsize, right? We lose our job, we burn people out, we neglect things that are important to us, we develop bad habits. Things can go downhill quick if we just let the mind go do whatever it, just let it, give it free rein, basically. So he's saying that we're in this ocean, just like the boat in the ocean is pulled here and there by the wind. We're in this ocean of material existence, or he says the ocean of mental speculation. And if we just let the mind do whatever it wants to do, then we're going to end up just getting dragged from one body to another. So we have to control the mind. Prabhupada continues. By regulative practice, one can control the mind, and this is the purpose of the yoga system, abhyasa yoga yuktena. But there's a chance of failure in the yoga system, especially in this age of Kali, because the yoga system uses artificial means. So here by yoga system, he's talking about Ashtanga yoga, where you're restraining the senses from the sense objects, and you're trying to control the breath and absorb your mind internally, focusing on the tip of the nose and things like that Krishna describes in chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita, but this is a mechanical process. So he's saying that whenever we do something that's kind of artificial or mechanical or just kind of not natural to the soul, it's hard to sustain that. We can easily slip from that process. But he says, if the mind is engaged in bhakti yoga, however, by the grace of Krishna, one can very easily control it. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has recommended Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam. One should chant the holy name of the Lord constantly, for the holy name of the Lord is non-different from Hari, the Supreme Person. So the benefit here that Bhakti Yoga means that we are approaching Krishna. We're taking shelter of Krishna. We're chanting the holy names of Krishna, calling out to him for help. And what makes it easy, or at least possible, to control the mind in Bhakti Yoga is that Krishna helps. And Krishna is the supreme controller. So we may not be able to control our minds, but Krishna can control anything. He does control everything. So if we just appeal to him, Krishna, my mind is all over the place, and it's disturbing me so much. It's causing me so many problems, all these far out, thoughts and feelings and desires. They're really disturbing me. Please, take charge of this situation. Please, rein my mind in. So, and then Krishna helps. Prabhupada says, by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra constantly, one can fix the mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. Savaya mana Krishna padara vindayo. And in this way achieve the perfection of yoga. Otherwise, the flickering mind will hover on the platform of mental speculation for sense enjoyment, And one will have to transmigrate from one body to another, because the mind is trained only in relation to the material elements, or in other words, to sense gratification, which is false. Maya Sukhaya Param Udvahato Vimudham. Bhagavatam 7:943. Rascals, Vimudhan, being controlled by mental speculation, make huge arrangements by which to enjoy life temporarily. But they must give up the body at the time of death, when everything is taken away by Krishna's external energy. Mrityu Sarva Harash Chaham. At that time, whatever one has created in this life is lost, and one must automatically accept a new body by the force of material nature. In this life, one may have constructed a very tall skyscraper, but in the next life, because of one's mentality, one may have to accept a body like that of a cat, a dog, a tree, or perhaps a demigod. Thus, the body is offered by the laws of material nature. Karanam gunasangosya sadasad yoni janmasu. Bhagavad Gita 13:22. The spirit soul takes birth in higher and lower species of life only because of its association with the three qualities of material nature. Urdvam gachanti sattvasta madhye tishtanti rajasaha jaganya gunavrittista ado gachanti tamasaha. Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets, and those in the mode of ignorance go down to hellish worlds. Bhagavad Gita 14:18. In conclusion, the Krishna consciousness movement offers the topmost welfare activity for human society. The saner section of human society must therefore take this movement very seriously for the benefit of all humanity. To save oneself from the repetition of birth and death, one must purify his consciousness. Sarvopadi vinir muktam tat parat vena nirmalam. One must be freed from all designations. I am American, I am Indian, I am this, I am that, and come to the platform of understanding that Krishna is the original master and we are his eternal servants. When the senses are purified and engaged in Krishna's service, one achieves the highest perfection. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchite. The Krishna consciousness movement is a movement of bhakti yoga, Vairagya Vidya, Nija Bhakti Yoga. By following the principles of this movement, one becomes disassociated from material mental concoctions and is established on the original platform of the eternal relationship between the living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead as servant and master. This, in summary, is the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So in case you're wondering what we're doing here in the Krishna consciousness movement, why do we do what we do? Because, some of the things that we do may seem a little strange, right? Especially if we're coming from a Western background. It's like, what is going on? Somebody up there swinging some fire lamp around, or everyone's paying obeisances, and what is this here on the altar? And why are we saying Sanskrit? Nobody even understands what we're saying. And there may be many things that we're kind of like, why are we doing this? So Srila Prabhupada is saying that the purpose of all of this is to disassociate ourselves from material mental concoctions and establish ourselves on the original platform of the eternal relationship between the living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead as servant and master. In other words, to try to disconnect ourselves from our false identity, the false ego, which is basically, I am this body, and all the things that are connected to this body are my identity, and to realize that I'm an eternal servant of Krishna. I'm not the body, I'm the soul within the body. This body is going to die. In fact, I've had many bodies. I've been through so many bodies, so many species, and in those bodies I've had all kinds of relationships and all kinds of experiences and thoughts and feelings, and I've forgotten all of them, or most of them. Of course, they're still back there somewhere in the innermost recesses of our mind. And sometimes these things come up, in dreams, and or we get disturbing thoughts, and we're just like, where did that come from? Right, something from a previous life. But none of those lifetimes were us, as is evidence that I'm someone totally different now. And in my next lifetime, when I leave this body, if I don't perfect my spiritual consciousness, my Krishna consciousness, then I'm going to take another body. I'm going to take another birth to another mother and father, in another family, in another situation, maybe another country, who knows, maybe in another species, another planet. Of course, everybody here who's hearing is pretty much safe from being born in a lower species, because once we start on the spiritual path, then Krishna protects us from being immersed in total ignorance where we have no opportunity to understand God. So pretty much guaranteed we're going to get a human form of life, but where that is, what situation, we don't know. But Srila Prabhupada says that in the previous verse purport, he says that the mind is the subtle substance in which the body is created. I thought that was very interesting. So before we leave this body, we're already beginning to create our next body. And he uses that analogy of when we're walking. So before we, says, a person traveling on the road rests one foot on the ground and then lifts the other. So when you're walking, you don't lift up your back leg until the front leg has, is firmly rested on the ground. So it's like your first step is there and the back step follows. Then he also says, compares it to a caterpillar that's walking on a little plant and going from one leaf to another leaf. So its back end is on the back leaf still, and the front end gets on another leaf, and it's not until he's firmly holding onto that second leaf that he lifts up his back legs and totally transfers himself to the next leaf. So there's a sense in which we are already creating our next body in this life. And that is, it's all happening in the mind. He's saying that the mind is the substance in which our next body is created. Very interesting, right? So what does that mean? That means according to our thoughts and feelings and desires, we're basically creating our destiny. We're creating our destiny because Krishna says here, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tyajat yante kalevaram tam tam evaiti konteya sada tat bhava bhavataha. He says, whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. So what are we going to remember when we quit our body? It's going to be something that was very significant to us during our life, right? Some person that we had a very deep, loving relationship with, or maybe a place that we were very connected to, or maybe some unfulfilled desire. There's something that we wanted to do and we didn't get a chance, and we die thinking, oh, I didn't get a chance to do that thing. So then we might be born in a situation where, those things all come to pass. It's a continuum. It's not random where we go at the time of death. So that's very important for us because it means that we can basically, make our bookings for the next life in this life by molding our consciousness, our activities of thinking, feeling, and willing in certain ways. And the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement is to create a consciousness of Krishna, right? So that we think about Krishna, so that we feel in relation to Krishna, so that our desires are aligned with the desires of Krishna. And then at the time of death, those thoughts and feelings and desires will be prominent. And then when we leave this body, we will go to Krishna, because that's what we're absorbed in. And going with Krishna is where we are meant to be. That's our original constitutional position. That Srila Prabhupada says that we're trying to go back home, back to Godhead. And so here in this material world, we spend so much time and energy trying to get comfortable, trying to carve out a home for ourselves, right? Trying to get our family situation all nice and get our little, homestead house and make it comfortable and get the new furniture and, get a car and get our insurance and make it all safe, and protect it, and security systems and all these things. We're trying to make ourselves comfortable, but there's always we can never be totally secure in this material world because anything can happen at any moment. The nature of this material world is that it's unstable. It's always changing. Right? If there's one thing sure about material life is that it's going to change. Things are going to change. And we see that whether we like it or not, things change. Sometimes for the benefit, sometimes for the detriment, but it's changing. But we have an eternal identity in relationship with Krishna that doesn't change. So you might think, well, if that doesn't change, then how are we not there now? How are we here? And so Prabhupada explains that our identity is actually there, but it's covered. It's covered over by all these layers of material conditioning. And our task for this lifetime as spiritual aspirants is to try to purify that conditioning, to try to remove the covers of our identity, of our eternal identity, so that we can actually understand who we are and stop living a false life, thinking that we're something we're not, and trying to be happy being someone that we're not, and thinking that we own things that are going to be taken away from us, and just being frustrated and disappointed all the time. So, yeah. And Prabhupada says here that one must train the mind in the system of bhakti yoga to always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. So all the things that we do are meant to help us to always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. Right? That's why we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Because when we say the name of someone, then we think of that person. And that's just natural. So when we say Hare Krishna, then we're going to think of Krishna. And the more we chant Hare Krishna and the more we engage in service to Krishna and Krishna's devotees, then the more we're going to start to develop our eternal relationship with Krishna. The more we're going to feel, not just think of Krishna in an intellectual way, like, oh yeah, Krishna, he's, this person who speaks Bhagavad Gita, or, he has this form that we see, but we'll actually have some feeling for Krishna because of the ways that he has shown up in our lives, the way he has reciprocated with our services, the way he's helped us, the way he's made so many arrangements for us to come closer to him. Oh, really? Hare Krishna. So, so then when we chant Hare Krishna, after, also not just chanting, but also serving, then that name starts to actually mean a lot more, right? It's not just a name, but it's a whole relationship. Krishna, it's a whole relationship. Just like if I say Jack, right? Jagadish, who are you thinking of? His dad's name is Jack. So, but you're not just thinking, if you keep saying Jack, 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 then you're not just like, okay, there's a person named Jack who happens to be my dad, right? But you're going to start remembering all the experiences that you've had together, all the loving exchanges, all the way your dad has helped you and nurtured you and instructed you, or maybe you'll remember some argument you had with him when you were a teenager, but you made up, or, all these pastimes, all these experiences that you had together. So then it's not just a name, but there's so much feeling connected to it, right? There's just like, it's very deeply meaningful because you have had your experiences with that person. So the more we experience Krishna through devotional service, then the more when we chant Hare Krishna, it has meaning, and feelings will come up, and that chanting will be full of appreciation of Krishna's wonderful transcendental qualities, his pastimes, his different forms that he takes, all of his different ways that he's personally, individually helped us in our lives. So this chanting of Hare Krishna becomes something very powerful. It becomes a powerful reminder of our relationship with Krishna, our lost relationship with Krishna. And then another thing that we do is we come to the temple. We have the deity of Krishna, Shri Shri Radha Kalachandji here in the temple, Radha and Krishna. And so when we see them, then it's hard to not remember them, right? You may be walking down the street and thinking, oh, I have so many things to do today. Oh, this person said that thing, that was really annoying. Or, you're thinking of all different things, but when you walk through this door and pay your obeisances and stand up and look, you're like, whoa, Radha Kalachandji. And all of those things that were on your mind a minute ago, they just kind of like, they just kind of disappear, right? So that's the beauty of having the form of the Lord, doing the temple worship. And the more we do that, the more we connected we come to it, and the more we serve the deity, the more that also becomes deeply personal. And there are, a lot of very wonderful thoughts and feelings that come to us when we're standing in front of the deity. And then another thing that we do, one of our practices, is that we hear, right? Like all of you now, this is a devotional practice. You're doing bhakti yoga right now just by sitting here and hearing a class on scripture, on Srimad Bhagavatam. Because by hearing this philosophy, then we come to understand Krishna more. We understand who he is, because there's different ways we can understand a person, right? We understand them by what they do. Right? If you observe a person's actions, you can know something about them. And then another way you can know a person is by talking to them, right? According to what they say, you get to know something about them. So when we read the scriptures, it's a combination of learning about all the things that Krishna does and also hearing all the things that Krishna says, right? So in Bhagavad Gita, he's instructing Arjuna. There's so many instructions. So based on his instructions, we can understand what kind of personality Krishna is. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, there's pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan, Krishna in Dwarka, Krishna in his different incarnations and all of their activities, and how wonderful they are, how merciful he is, how compassionate he is, how chivalrous he is, and how playful he is. And so we start to really appreciate Krishna by hearing about him. And so when we sit down for class, then there's a feeling like, wow, I'm going to hear about Krishna, the person that does wonderful things, that gives amazing instructions that enrich my life, that guide me on my path, that save me from so much hassle in this material world when I actually follow them. So all these things are meant to help us to focus on Krishna, to always remember Krishna and never forget him, so that at the time of death we can go back to Krishna. And as Prabhupada says here, Krishna helps. In Bhakti Yoga, it says, Prabhupada writes, because the mind is ultimately controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, the word apasmriti is significant. So he says that in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Mata smritir gyanam apohanam cha, that from Krishna comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So if we want to forget about Krishna and just, live an independent material life, then he will enable us to forget him. But if we want to actually remember him, if we want to revive our dormant original constitutional relationship with him, then he helps. Right? Prabhupada says, instead of allowing one to forget one's real position, Krishna can revive one's original identity at the time of death, even though the mind may be flickering. Although the mind may work imperfectly at the time of death, Krishna gives a devotee shelter at his lotus feet. So this is very reassuring too, because you might think, oh, well, I've been trying my whole life to remember Krishna, really want to go back to Krishna, but God knows what kind of state of mind I'm going to be at the time of death. I don't know how I'm going to die. It could be some very fearful situation. And, how can I guarantee that I'm going to think about Krishna? So Prabhupada is saying that don't worry. Even though your mind may work imperfectly, somebody may even be unconscious at the time of death and not able to fix their mind on anything because they totally lost control of their mind. But Prabhupada says that despite that, Krishna will help us to remember him. Krishna will come into our minds if that's what we want, if that's really what we've been cultivating throughout our lifetime. So this is the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement. Now getting back to Kamsa, so all these arguments are to try to convince Kamsa to not kill his sister Devaki. So how is this convincing him? He's saying that Kamsa, you're worried about the 8th son of Devaki killing you, but you're going to die anyway eventually, and you don't know where you're going. And if you kill your sister, that's a really heinous thing. That's like extremely sinful. And for every action, there's a reaction. You're going to get terrible karma for that. That karma is going to accrue in your next life, and you're going to have a really miserable next lifetime, if you do this activity. So, it's not guaranteed when you're going to die in this life, but it is guaranteed that you are going to die. And it's not you're not sure what kind of body you're going to get in the next life, but if you kill your sister now, you can be sure that you're going to have a horrible body, so let's go with things that we're sure of, right? The things that we're sure of is that 1, you're going to die. 2, if you kill your sister, you're going to have a miserable next life. So is that really what you want? And so Kamsa, he's, going to be like, no, so hopefully, right? So he's going to be like, okay, well, let me go with some, an uncertain, possibly good future than a certain terrible future. That's what Vasudeva's trying to convince him of. So, and Prabhupada quotes Jatasya hi dhruva mrityur, that for one who has taken his birth, death is certain, and for one who is dead, birth is certain. So those who have taken birth, which is all of us, then death is sure. And for one who has died, if they haven't perfected their life in Krishna consciousness, then they're going to be born again into another material body. If they have perfected their life in Krishna consciousness, then they're going to go back home, back to Godhead, and never have to get old, get hurt, get sick, or die again. So that's what we're aiming for, that we can go back to our original eternal loving relationship with Krishna and stop trying to be happy in these false relationships. And the way to do that is to practice bhakti yoga. So this process is very practical. And it's much easier than any other spiritual process because Krishna helps. Right? It all comes down to Krishna. So we just need to follow the process that our acharyas have given. Chant Hare Krishna, hear about Krishna, come take darshan of Krishna in the temple, worship Krishna, offer our obeisances to Krishna. And Krishna says that if you do those things, manmana bhava madbhakto, madhyaji mam namaskaru, mame vaishyasi satyam te pratijani priyosime. Says, always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage to me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you're my very dear friend. So Krishna is our very dear friend, and we are his very dear friends. And Krishna wants all of us to be happy, and he wants us to be eternally happy, and he knows how we can be happy. And it's not through material sense gratification. But unfortunately, we've been in this material world for so many lifetimes that our minds have been molded in such a way that we really believe. We have this deep-rooted belief that if I just get a little more money, if I just get in a relationship with this particular person, if I just, get the latest phone, or if I just, get this job or whatever, if I just move to this other place, then I'm going to be happy. And it never works, right? All those just this and just that, it ends up just leading to another thing, another disappointment, another eventual frustration, and another material desire. And we go through that birth after birth after birth. So we have to start learning, right? We have to start learning. Failure is the pillar of success. So we failed over multiple lifetimes trying to be happy through sense gratification, and we should just be like, you know what? This is not working. Sense gratification is really not making me happy. Let me try something else. There has to be another way. And Krishna's like, yes, there's another way. It's called bhakti yoga. So let's try to think about Krishna and try to serve selflessly. And we experience that it's always, we become more happy by giving than receiving. Right? We become more happy by serving others than by being served. So even in the mundane, on the mundane platform, that's a fact. And what to speak of when we take that, giving spirit, and we take that service, selfless service spirit, and we shift it to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is all-powerful and all-merciful and all-loving and so eager to reciprocate with us and help us in every way, then, we're just going to be showered with baskets of blessings, and we'll experience a level of happiness that we've never experienced before and that we can never give up. Like Krishna says, that upon attaining this, one thinks there is no greater gain, and one loses aspirations for all other lower pleasures. So let's take very seriously what Vasudeva is saying here. This is Krishna's father. He's a very intelligent person. That's how he became qualified to be Krishna's dad. And so he's instructing Kamsa, and sometimes we're very much like Kamsa in that we have all these fears. We have a lot of fears. We're afraid of death. We're afraid of losing things. We're afraid of defamation. And sometimes we act in impulsive ways to try to hold on to things. Just like Kamsa is about to kill his sister because of his fear. So we should remember that what is really important, what is it that we can, because in this material world we ultimately can't hold on to anything. We can hold on to our money, our possessions, so-called possessions, our relationships, even our own body. Everything is going to be taken away from us. So what can we hold on to? That is our relationship with Krishna. Anything spiritual, right? Material things are all temporary, but spiritual things are all eternal. So instead of clinging to material things that are just going to be pried out of our grip sooner or later, we try to really hold on to those spiritual relationships, spiritual connections, absorb ourselves in spiritual activities and Krishna consciousness. So I'll stop here and open it up for any questions or comments. Yes, Lalita Sindri.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you for a nice class. We missed your classes all these days. Thank you for coming back and giving your association.
Thank you for always being here.
My question is, Mataji, suppose a small child, when it touches fire, and then all its life it will remember, okay,
Touches what?
touches fire,
Mm.
right? All its life it's going to remember the child, that if I touch fire, my hand is going to burn, I need to be careful.
Mm.
But for millions and millions of lifetimes, we know that all these material things which we are attached to is going to give suffering. The material body, the relationships, name, fame, money, everything. We have suffered very miserably, millions of lifetimes. So why is it so difficult for us to realize why we are not able to? Because just a small child just touch of fire realizes it. But this has happened over and over and over and again. It's not just one lifetime, 100 lifetimes.
Yeah. Yeah, so it comes down to a very deep-rooted belief that I am this body. Right? So if we, it's called false ego, right? Thinking that I am something that I'm not. This is like the beginning of Maya or illusion. And as long as we think that we're something, according to who we think we are, we're going to act in ways that we believe will benefit ourselves. Right? We're wired to try to act in ways that benefit ourselves somehow or other. So if I think I am this body, then it means that happiness is going to come through making my body happy. Right? So then we're just going to pursue sense enjoyment, right? Trying to enjoy the different senses of the body, right? Through food and sex and, and the subtle body, which means the mind, the intellect, right? Because there's a gross physical body that we want to engage our, eyes in seeing something beautiful, hands in touching something nice, mouth, tongue in tasting something nice. But then there's also the subtle body, which we want some nice mental stimulation. We want to have like positive feelings. We want to have stimulating intellectual experiences, So this is all gross and subtle body. And the problem is that we're actually very deeply convinced that we are these things, and that the problem is just that we're not doing it right. Right? Like there's a saying that those who think that money can't buy happiness don't know where to shop. Right? So that's what we're thinking. Those who think that sense gratification doesn't give happiness just haven't found the right sense gratification. Right? We're just thinking, this relationship didn't work out, but this person is going to make me happy. This person is going to make all my dreams come true. Or I went to that movie and it was kind of, boring. The plot was not very interesting. But, the new movie came out. Let me try that one. That's going to really, give me some pleasure. So we keep, trying to just change our experiences. And that's why we keep changing bodies, right? Or this body, at the end of life, we're like, all right, this body didn't give me very much happiness. Let me try a different kind of body. Being a female wasn't all cracked up. It was cracked up to be, let me try being a male. Maybe that'll be more fun. Whatever, we have all these things. And we always think the grass is greener on the other side. It's just a continuous thing that there's something out there. So we have to be very, very deeply convinced that we're not this body, that we're the soul within the body, and the only thing that's going to make the soul happy is reawakening our eternal relationship with the Supreme Soul, Krishna, and having an active, loving, relationship with him. And then the more we start doing, the beauty of a bhakti yoga is we don't have to wait, until we leave this body. We don't have to wait until we die to have a relationship with Krishna. We can start already, right? We can already, make offerings that's the beauty of deity worship, right? You can cook something and offer it to the Lord, and you can feel his reciprocation. You can come here and do kirtan for the pleasure of the Lord or for your home deities, and you can feel some connection. And so that relationship already starts to develop, starts to open up in this lifetime. And then at the time of death, we're so absorbed in that relationship, then it's like, we don't even notice. You know, like when Dhruva Maharaj left his body, it was just so seamless. He didn't even notice that he was dying, you know? Didn't notice that the soul was leaving the body because he was so internally absorbed in his loving relationship with the Lord that he basically just went from a deep internal meditation on that relationship to actually just really being there with the Lord. So that's what we're working towards, right? We're trying to come to more deep and sustained periods of Krishna Smaranam, where we actually enter into deep meditations on Krishna and realize, we can even realize before we leave our body what our original eternal form is, what our relationship with Krishna is, and we can begin to serve him in meditation within our hearts and minds, meditating on that relationship. And Krishna accepts that service, and he reciprocates with that service, and he reveals more and more, the more seriously we want to know him. Okay. That's why we need to keep hearing. We need to keep hearing again and again and again that we're not this body, we're the soul, right? Everything in this body is temporary, but our relationship with Krishna is eternal, and we need to prioritize that. Because if we are spiritual beings, then, we need to live a spiritual life. So the onus is upon us, in the human form of life, to figure out, what does that mean? What does it mean to live a spiritual life? Who am I as a spirit soul? How do I function as a spiritual being in this world? And so the scriptures give us so much information on practical ways to live a spiritual life, even in the material world, to be in every way a soul, even within the material body, to just engage this material body in spiritual activities so that we can even spiritualize this body, and we can spiritualize our possessions by using them in Krishna's service. So in that way we can transform our whole life from material to spiritual. But we have to understand the urgency of it, and the reality of the situation. Jagadish?
So I was listening to a lecture by Bhakti Tirtha Swami talking about Krishna's plan and how basically based off of our karma, we have no idea what's coming ahead, and we don't remember our innumerable past lives, so we have this whole idea of thinking that this could be good for me, this could be good for me, and making these decisions based off of our limited capacity.
Yeah.
But in the moment, but then there's this Supreme Being, Krishna, who wants to give us what's best for us. And you mentioned that following Krishna's plan saves us. And so how can we more practically do this? How can we really surrender into Krishna's plan?
Yeah, good question. So there are general things that we can know from the acharyas that are Krishna's plan for us, right? That are general things that everyone can do, right? Like chanting 16 rounds, following the 4 regs, living a pure life, associating with devotees, doing kirtan, shravanam, kirtanam, hearing, all these things that we've been talking about. That's all, that's sort of the framework of Krishna's plan. And we can be very sure that if we follow those things, all the principles and practices that Srila Prabhupada has given us, that our founder Acharya has given us, then we're following Krishna's plan. Then within that, there's also, each of us personally is going to do something. We're going to contribute to the society, to the world, in unique ways, according to our natures, right? So one thing, depending on what level of consciousness we're at, one way of doing that is varnashram dharma, right? Like understanding what is our psychophysical nature, how am I wired in this lifetime, what are my duties. So yeah, Krishna created this system that helps us to understand that particular psychophysical natures are suited towards certain activities, that if we perform those activities, we'll be satisfied, we'll be appreciated, we'll advance. And if we do something else, we try to be someone that we're not, then we're going to be disturbed and disturb others, basically, and not make so much advancement. So on the material level, we need to understand what is our swadharma according to varna and ashram. And then beyond that, there's also sanatan dharma, which means our eternal swarup, our eternal position, or before that, because even before that, our service, right, our devotional service. So for that, we have the guidance of spiritual master. Right? We have our spiritual master that we consult. And also the Lord is within the heart. Okay, so we have, actually there's so much guidance. There's guru, and there's our spiritual master, there's sadhus, other devotees that help us. Maybe other devotees come and be like, hey, you seem to really have a proclivity for this, and there's a service opportunity that seems like it would be really suitable for you. What do you think? You know? And so we can take those as hints of, you know, Krishna pushing us in a certain direction, or at least, you know, try it out and see how it feels. And then there's Krishna who's in the heart, that Krishna gives us an attraction for certain activities, right? We feel called from within the heart. That people talk about having a calling, like I was called to move into the ashram, or I was called to just dedicate myself and be a traveling monk, or I was called to write, or to start a school, or open a hospital, or whatever, you know. Sometimes we get that calling from within. It's like we might think, oh, is it the mind, or is it the Lord in the heart really trying to push me? And so if it doesn't go away, you know, if like no matter what we do, it doesn't go away, and we also consult with our spiritual masters and the other devotees that I'm feeling this calling, I really feel this strong burning desire to do this in Krishna's service. Do you think it's the right thing for me? And then, Prabhupada says that a devotee's path will be illuminated by Krishna from within and confirmed by the spiritual master from without, from outside. So that's kind of like our checks and balances. We get a desire to do something, or a devotee, suggests that we do something, and we're like, oh yeah, that could be a really great thing for me to do. And then we bounce the idea off, our trusted mentors, people that really know about us and care about us. And then if they say, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, go for it, then it's like, all right, I guess that's what Krishna wants me to do. So it's kind of like that, it's being, and that's why it's important to be introspective. We should really, listen to our hearts, and it's also important to study Shastra so that we know there are guidelines, right? Shastra gives us kind of like, if you're playing a game of tennis, you can move about and hit the ball and play the game within the boundary lines. So Shastra gives us the boundary lines that, okay, you can do, there are many things that we can do in serving Krishna within these boundary lines, but outside of that, there are things that you might feel called to do that are not supported by Shastra. So we need to know the boundaries, and we need to know the general principles. We need to be introspective, and we need to also consult sadhus and gurus in our lives. Yeah, that's a line. That's like Srila Prabhupada ends one of his purports. You can find it in Vedavasi. It's the last sentence of one of his purports in Bhagavad Gita. Tulsi Saki, did you have your hand up?
In general, if we find people envious, we avoid them. But in this example, we see that Vasudev didn't have that option of avoiding Kamsa, and so he started preaching to him. So is that like some example that we as devotees also can, like you're in a situation where you can't avoid the envious, then try to preach to them?
You can try it. Good luck. Yeah. Also, Kamsa wasn't convinced with this. Vasudeva had to ultimately be like, look, I'll just bring you all the babies and you can do whatever you want with them. Then he was like, okay, Vasudeva's an honest person, I'll go for that. So, generally people who are envious of us, they're not going to really want to listen to us. So that's hard. We can try. Who knows, the penny may drop one day. But if that's the situation, then, if you're living or serving with an envious person or in the workplace or wherever, a family member or something, and you can't avoid them, you just need to be a little detached, and try to see the situation. Okay, somehow or other Krishna has arranged this situation. I believe that Krishna is my best friend. Everything he does is good. So somehow he's put me together with this envious person to learn something, to grow in some way, and try to see it as positive. See everything as Krishna's mercy, Krishna's personal, his relationship for our improvement. That maybe this person is going to push my buttons in such a way that it's going to make me aware of what my faults are, where is my room for improvement. Okay, should we? Oh, I want to take Chaitanya Baba's question because he's visiting. Press the button and hold it. There you go.
I was just wondering, there was so much mention about the mind in this purport, and I was wondering how, according in your experience, how does the mind evolve as one progresses on the path, as one becomes a devotee? Because even we know there are many non-devotees, regular people who are also very level-headed, and we know from Shastra that it's the mind that is the cause of all our distress. So how do you see the mind, evolving as one progresses?
So you can see materialistic people. If someone's a materialistic person, they're just totally focused on their material life, and they've got their material goals, they've got their process that they're going to reach their goal, and they're just locked into that. They're going to be like peaceful, right? It's when you come to Krishna consciousness with your materialistic mind and you try to do spiritual things that the mind kind of starts rebelling. Mind is like, what the heck? What are you doing? No, we're supposed to be being happy through sense gratification. What is this waking up at 4 a.m, sitting there for 2 hours and just mumbling some 3 words over and over again? Have you gone nuts, right? So mind is like, no, you should be staying in bed, you should be being comfortable and, eating whatever you want to eat. Like, who says you can't eat meat, fish, and eggs? Like, they're protein, people have been eating that forever. What is all this nonsense? So, what are you doing? Standing out on the street, approaching people to try to give them books. Obviously, these people are not interested. Why don't you just get an office job, Like, why are you torturing yourself like this? So the mind, because it's been wired for so many lifetimes for sense gratification, when we start trying to make a change, then it rebels. And in the beginning, the mind is screaming at us. It's very loud. It's kind of like one devotee once described it, it's like you go to a concert and you're standing right in front of the loudspeaker, like a rock concert, and it's like, it's like your whole body is like pulsating with the thing. And if someone tries to talk to you, it's like hopeless. You can't hear a single thing they're saying. All you hear is that music coming out of the speaker. So in the beginning, all we hear is our mind, and it's just like so difficult. It's a rocky road. But as we continue chanting Hare Krishna, then it purifies the mind, it calms the mind, it delivers the mind, right? Mantra, that's literally what the word mantra means, is to deliver the mind from its material obsessions. So then it's a gradual process where we're kind of moving away from the loudspeaker. So that voice, inner voice of the materialistic mind becomes softer and softer, and then gradually we're like out of the concert hall, down the street, couple blocks away, and we can hardly even hear the music. Maybe if we, stop and, we're just kind of like idle, then we might hear, the mind's whisperings, and we're like, no. But we can just start chanting Hare Krishna and tune it out quickly. So then comes a point where you're so far away from that speaker that you're not hearing it all anymore, and rather you're starting to hear a different speaker. You're starting to hear like the Bhagavatam speaker. You're starting to hear Krishna speaking, and that, actually you're not in this body. And then you'll find yourself that instead, say you're out on book distribution, this happened to me, my mind used to yell at me like, are you nuts? This is like the dumbest thing to do. This is like you're standing out in the cold, in the rain, trying to approach people with things that they don't want. They're just like rejecting you out time and time again. And then got to the point where, and some days I would be able to push through and continue, and other days I would be like, I'm going back to the temple. This is too much. But then after some years, then got to the point where, even if I got distracted from my service and maybe I started doing something else out in town instead of book distribution, my mind would be like, what are you doing? People are walking down the street. They're living their materialistic lives. They're all